Join us to a deep dive into the learning journey with Joana Santos Silva, the Director of Strategic Leadership Program, and it's a partnership with ISEG and Columbia Business School. So, Joana, where did the idea for creating this program come from?
So the idea that we had when we were creating this program actually came from a gap in the market when we spoke with top level executives and C-suite managers. What they told us was, in fact, that they felt that there was something missing in terms of a program that could actually help them in terms of their leadership profile and leadership development, but that also would approach and discuss and debate the main topics in terms of what is the leader's agenda. So the strategic issues, the challenges, and some of the more exciting and new innovative technologies that are happening in the management space. So ultimately what we did was we combined these two. So basically the things that leaders are somehow being challenged with, and on the other hand, of course, this incentive and this initiative of always continuously developing your leadership skills. So that's where the idea came from.
And what makes Columbia Business School a great partner for this program?
So we actually scoped a lot of different potential business schools in terms of partners. We had a discussion about inclusively of whether we should have a European partner, an American partner, should it be West Coast, East Coast? And we ended up with Columbia Business School for several reasons, but I'd like to perhaps really reinforce why they're such a great partner for this program in particular. Well, first of all, of course, it's a great school. They're #2 in the world right now in terms of the rankings. They've actually surpassed schools such as Harvard, MIT, Kellogg, others like very prestigious schools. They're one of the only 8 Ivy League schools in the world. So once again, this very elitist, top prestigious, well-renowned, world-renowned actually, schools in the world. And there are a couple of interesting things about Columbia. First of all, it's located in Manhattan. So New York, but in the center of Manhattan. So as they say, they're at the center of business, which is something which is quite interesting for top managers. So we're in this space where the context of what's happening in the world is really happening at their doorstep. And then, of course, what we really liked about them was the fact that they have strong and renowned faculty in the space of leadership, and they're really good at innovative and different types of methodologies in terms of their training. So that was another aspect that we really valued. And of course, and that's the added bonus, and that's the photo that you're seeing in that slide, they have a new campus in Manhattan. So it was just basically opened this year to 2022. So it'll be a privilege for the participants of the Strategic Leadership Program to be able to use this new facility, or facilities actually, and discover this new space that also belongs to Columbia. And our classes will actually happen in this new building.
And who is the target of this program?
So the program is only targeted, or specifically targeted at C-level and first-line directors of companies. Our idea and reasoning is the following. You should be somebody who has the responsibility of shaping the vision, the mission, and obviously the strategy of your company. More than that, you should obviously have specific leadership responsibilities. So you should be leading a team. And it's quite important in keeping the right level of participants in this program. So we wanted people with a similar level of seniority. In particular, because we wanted to be sure that the level of the discussion and the debate amongst peers was a really, really high level. And of course, in any program, one of the added advantages is the networking. So the possibility to network with peers at your level who are like-minded, who are concerned about strategy, who are concerned about leadership, who are concerned about the challenges that companies are facing today, is somehow guaranteed due to the fact that this target of this program is very exclusive, high-level top management, senior executives who have several years of responsibility of training and leading people and companies.
And what are the 3 parts of the program structure?
So the program is actually quite interesting because it was built and designed as an actual journey. It's not a couple of different topics that we put together and created sort of like an agenda. So, you know, it's not about just random classes that have come together to sort of design your experience. It actually is, it's an immersive experience, and it's a building block. So the first part of the program, we call it Immerse, or the Leader's Agenda. And that happens in Lisbon, and it's a kickoff with basically all of the key hot topics of what's going on in terms of the Leader's Agenda. So things such as, blockchain technology, things as governance, things such as, how do you do future perspectives, etc. So it's very much, it's a diverse set of topics, but they're topics that we found that were on the leaders' sort of main topics and main issues in terms of their challenges. The second part of the program we've called Develop, and it's called the Leader's Journey. And this is, of course, done and promoted by our partner, Columbia Business School. And it really is a really transformative experience for the leaders themselves, because ultimately it's all about you creating your own leader's journey, creating your leadership narrative. And at the end, it culminates with an experience which is called with the creation of what we've called the Leader's Credo. So what it means to you as being a leader, and in particular, how, in terms of the challenge that you're facing today, how are you going to implement that in your company when you go back? And then finally, the third part of the program is called Engage, or the Faces of Leadership. And this is really hands-on. So this is the capstone of the entire journey. And it's actually, for me, the funnest part, because it really is about creating the metaphors and parallels of this idea of leadership with different types of leaders that are not necessarily managers per se. So, we'll have a lesson with Admiral Gouveia-Melo in terms of what is this idea of leading selflessly? What is this idea of the purpose, right? Leaders don't lead for themselves, they lead for others. We have a really interesting session where people will actually create a piece of art in a historical landmark. And it's a piece of art which is going to be constructed collaboratively amongst the peers. So this idea that ultimately leadership is also being able to get people on board, have their buy-in, and collectively creating something fantastic that by ourselves we wouldn't be able to do. And that day finishes off with a really interesting metaphor about what it means to be a creative leader or an innovative leader. And it finishes with a session with Chef Eric Sapsula, who, as you know, has Michelin stars, and how he's created a space for innovation and for creativity, and how he balances that with what is the operational efficiency and, of course, quality of what happens in his restaurants every day. So how do we match these different things? And it's very much about inspiring people and how do they take these lessons from these leaders into their own space in management?
And what are the highlights of each part of the journey?
So I just talked a lot about this last part, but perhaps going back, I think for me, in my opinion, in the first week in Lisbon, perhaps the two things that I think that are most interesting is we have the opportunity of having Professor Colin Meyer from the University of Oxford, who is the pioneer in the entire area of governance. And if ever there was a need to talk about governance and its role in leadership in companies, I'd say today it's even more and more relevant. And to be having the privilege of having somebody who actually shaped the fields today in terms of the academic concepts is quite amazing. The other thing I think is interesting on the first week is we have a partnership with Simon Sinek Inc. So participants will be able to participate in the Infinite Game Workshop from Simon Sinek. And this very much, once again, linked with what is this idea of purpose ultimately, right? And we're in this game and it's a continuous game. So I think those are going to be two really high points in terms of the first week. In terms of New York, so of course, besides everything fantastic that's going to happen with our partner at Columbia Business School, I'd probably highlight two things. One of them is we're going to have a private session, a private, let's say, talk with one of the survivors, first respondent, hero of 9/11, that will actually take place at the 9/11 Memorial. And it's quite interesting to hear from a first-person perspective what it means to lead in a crisis. When people are dying and you're in a situation that is completely challenging and there's no formal leadership, how do you take action? How do you save others and save yourself? And of course, the last session in terms of what happens at Columbia Business School is something that's called Leadership Jazz, which I think is going to be a lot of fun. So we have a professor from Columbia Music School, the faculty, and him and his band, who are a jazz band, are going to explain to us how you can create melody, music, and harmony, even if you don't have sheet music. So you're not following instructions. And ultimately, I think that's what leaders do. They give us a vision. They tell us what they want to accomplish. And then when you have really good managers and really good teams, they make it happen. We don't necessarily manage them. Well, quite by the contrary, they play their roles, and it all comes together and it creates something fantastic. So I think that's gonna be not only a lot of fun. I think there's a lot of really interesting and insightful lessons to learn from Leadership Jazz.
And one last question: what are the advantage key takeaways for the participants of this program?
So I'd say probably, in my opinion, once again, I'd say 3 pillars. So the first one is, of course, there's a lot of learning. So and the program has, and we designed it this way, it's trying to create a correct balance between an academic approach and hands-on and experiences. So it's more or less 50-50. So the first part, of course, is all this idea of you learning more and more about these topics and these challenges, having really interesting debates with people who are very senior level as well, and getting to know more about what these challenges, how are they shaping the business landscape, what do they mean for me as a business leader, what do they mean potentially for me in my company, in my industry, in my business. We've also added some new things that are still let's say it's partly surprises in terms of what's going to happen when the actual program takes place. Because from when we designed it until today, of course, there have been lots of changes in terms of the macro context. So, issues like geopolitics and safety are more and more of a concern and are fundamental. And there'll be an extra session on that will happen in New York. And also this idea of putting people in situations where they're out of their safety zone and they have to somehow manage, and they don't really know how to tackle the problem beforehand. And so this idea of expect the unexpected. And it's very much it mimics the situation that we're living today, where we really don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. We've been going through more and more of these unexpected events, and good leaders have to be able to do that. So learning and better understanding on how I deal with novelty, how do I deal with these new challenges. The second thing I'd say is that you learn a lot about yourself. In particular, the leg that happens at Columbia, New York, is a lot about self-development, self-reflection, and this idea of creating identifying what is my leadership style, what is my narrative, how do I lead and decide in crises, why is it so important to have social capital. So, and ultimately, as I said, and I have mentioned, people are going to design their own leadership credo. So they're going to learn a lot about themselves and what they feel they need to be really good leaders. And then, as I mentioned as well, my third pillar, I'd say, really good network. I mean, really strong network among peers. Life is all about connections and relationships. And oftentimes we say that leadership is a lonely place. And it's hard for leaders usually to find unbiased relationships within their companies and their teams. So this idea that you have access to like-minded peers at your level, whom you can, create a really strong relationship with, because it's going to be intensive, immersive. We're going to try everything to create a lot of somatic markers, so you'll remember this for the rest of your life. So basically, to finish it off, I'd say, learning about these new challenges, learning about these new topics. The second thing is, of course, learning about yourself, what it means to you as a leader. And then ultimately, of course, this network of really great people who, as a group, we are going to create a really great experience. So for me, I'd just like to perhaps leave you off with this final sort of idea. So if you're interested in joining us, the program starts in September and goes until November. Of course, they're short dates in terms of what happens in each part of the journey. And if you want to know more, please check us out in terms of our website. And we're still accepting applications until July 15th. And for my part, I hope you really are interested and are hoping to expect the unexpected. And I hope to see you in September.